Hello. Hello everyone. How's the sound? I hope everyone hears me. So can anyone? Yeah, it's good. Oh, that's good. So I'll start. Today I'm going to show you a game between Seigen and Kitani Minoru, and it's the famous first game of the Kamakura Jubango. I've actually done something like this before with AGA, so you could probably find a similar thing in the AGA YouTube channel. But maybe I'll be doing a bit different today. So it's a different thing. I wanted to enjoy this game with everyone watching once more. It's a very characteristic game of the two players. And I think Seigen was at the peak of his career at this time. And this is the beginning of a number of Jubango. Jubango is best of 10 between two players. And as in this Jubango, it's generally if a player wins one-sidedly, he's going to force the other player into a handicap. So 4 straight wins, or a majority of 4 wins, 4 more wins than the opponent, will change the handicap. So at this time in Go, it was really a big thing, and it was sponsored by one of the biggest sponsors of Go, so it was very well broadcast and stuff like that. I guess it was just in the newspapers, actually. But it's one of my favorite games, and it was probably one of the best games of maybe both players in some ways. So going back to the beginning of the game here. This is in 1939. So this was several years after Seigen and Kitani had joined to make the Shinfuseki. So that was a new opening theory that they invented. And although they invented it together, the two players had a slightly different take on what the idea should be. And so Seigen was focusing on playing star points in the corners, which was it was radical at the time. At the time, everyone played 3-4 points mostly. So playing star points and basing your opening around that. And he liked to play 3-3 points. He played around with 3-3 points for a while, and I think he eventually stopped doing that. But he was playing star points and 3-3 points with the idea that that would settle the corner with one move. So it's become very normal now to play that move. But it was unusual at the time Seigen started doing it. One of the new innovations. And actually, Kitani Minoru was more interested in some unusual openings where he was playing the 5-3 point or the 5-5 point. He played some games with playing the central point, the tengen. Seigen was doing that a bit too. But in the end, it was this star point that survived the test of history. That's right, we don't have Chris Garlick. It was probably a couple of decades ago when I was in Seigen's study group. And it was not, I don't think it was called, Seihokai was a group when he was studying with Rin Kaiho. So that Ho is the Ho of Rin Kaiho, I think. So the Seihokai was a completely different thing. But there was a study group at Seigen's place. So I think it was his condominium. And we would get together there. And he was teaching mostly younger pros, and I was allowed to join him. But he was one of my favorite players anyway, even before we did that. And he had these wonderful ideas about playing two-space approaches, as we see here. And also if the opponent plays the knight's corner enclosure, he liked to play the shoulder hit. So that was sort of predecessor of AlphaGo, because AlphaGo liked to play this move also. If we just reverse the order of moves here. And he played again here. He liked to create this situation. And so he's still playing the star point in the lower right corner, in many of his games, he was playing 2-star points. So it's a bit, sometimes he plays the 3-4 point. He was flexible in that. No, 4-4 points, that's Roman G. I don't think 4-4 points were popular before the 19th century. In Edo, they were sort of a no-no, actually. For even games, well, for handicap games, of course, they would play the handicap stones on star points. But for even games, it was considered better to play the 3-4 point. Or they played 5-3 points, 5-4 points also. And yeah, Leonardo de Wagner says, why was the Kakari thought to be better than taking another corner? I think Go Seigen just liked to have that stone there at the 2-space approach point, these points here. And I was about to talk actually about Kitani's change in style. While there was a point during the Shinfusegi era, which started in the early 1930s, and it was started by Go Seigen and Kitani. There was a period where Kitani was playing high moves like the 5-5 point and not taking territory. But after a few years, a couple of years or a few years, he reverted to his original style, which was to take territory. So here he is back playing 3-4 points and taking territory in the corner. And of course, Go Seigen knows that. So he's playing these moves to sort of emphasize Kitani's style, which is very different from Go Seigen's style. You can see Go Seigen sort of likes to be floating around and having fast development. He likes to control the sides and the center of the board quickly. And so you can see that in White's moves there, which are high and a bit far away from the corners. And he's not so worried about territory. So it's just a kind of a style thing. And also the fact that he knows that basically since Kitani likes to take the territory, he's going to be cooperative in building this kind of thing. That's Brandon Moore asking what AI says about the value of F4. Oh, yes. Generally, AIs like to take the open corner. So I wouldn't be surprised if any of these moves, the white approach moves or the black answers, at any point you'd probably see the AI suggesting taking an open corner. Okay, let's go forward. And so he pushes here. This is a point where nowadays people have stopped playing that move. So maybe black would have played an approach move in the upper left. Let's see. I haven't actually made a variation for that. Yeah. So this was the computer suggested move when I looked at it with my version of Katago. And so yeah, pushing here. And sometimes you see people play different moves, like for instance, moves like this. Sometimes when white has a stronger control over the upper left area, probably not in this board position, but this is a kind of move you see. Moves towards the side can be played, just ignoring white's approach. That stone there that white has on the fourth line. It looks like black's ignoring it anyway. That kind of stuff is what people do now. But Kitani really liked to take the territory. He was very territory oriented, and he was extremely good at invading the opponent's moyo. So he was perfectly happy with giving his opponent a big network of a big area, because he was going to dive in, and he's really good at it. And you're going to see that in this game. And so both players are happy here. And Kitani curled around. And in the newspaper article about this game, there was a series of newspaper articles about it. It took them 3 days to play the game. So I think this was, I have the date as the 28th of September here. And it lasted to the 30th, I think. And so they were playing very slowly. They had 13 hours each. And then after that, they would have an overtime of 1 minute per move. This move was a move that Kitani had played, I think it was a few months before this game. And Hoinbo Shusai, who was officially the leading player of that time. He had a title and he didn't play very many other players. he was considered the leader of the Go Association, the Go whole system. His comment on this move was that it was bad and black should play the slide. So this is the move that is the normal Joseki, sliding here on the second line. And it's probably the better move. And Kitani is aware that objectively this is better. He's playing in a way that doesn't give white any co-threats. It's very solid. It's just the kind of move. You can see he's very tight here. He just likes to play that move. And it's going to continue in this way. By the way, Go Seigen for the most is playing moves that Go playing AIs sort of like. They wanted white to play this move a bit earlier, but generally most of his moves are liked by AIs. It's really amazing. And of course, black's moves here, they're not liked. But the interesting thing is that when humans do this, it's going to be, this isn't where the game is going to be decided. It's going to be perfectly playable for both plays. Okay. And so white plays here. Now this is actually sort of important thing that white plays here and immediately plays here. This move at c4 that white played is always played when white is about to build a position on the left side. So if white had played that and then, for instance, played elsewhere like this, that exchange would probably be bad. So it's a combination there that is really, it's a set of moves that should be considered they work together. Basically, this is stopping black from doing, for instance, if white did not play that and played here, at some point black could play here and get a bigger corner. So as far as territory is concerned, it's good to have this exchange in, and it's a forcing exchange. But the problem with that is that if white plays away and black pincers something like this, let's have black play something like this, white has lost the option of trading into the corner and sacrificing that one stone. So for instance, if white plays here immediately and black does something like this, maybe white at some point is going to play here, and we get into variations like this where maybe white's going to live in the corner. This is one potential variation that could happen. And you can see that in this case, white has gotten the corner territory, black has got the side. It's a pretty even trade. And it's important that white didn't play that exchange, because when white has played that exchange, white loses that option. So the moment white loses this option, it becomes pretty urgent for white to play this extension on the left side. And so you have to realize there's a continuity there. It's necessary. And black pushes here. Another very typical Kitani type move. And white played here and just took the side territory, very quickly taking big points. And this was, they had an interesting exchange of comments after the game, which is really, oh yes, I forgot to tell you, Brandon Moore, thank you for the question. This is well before Komi. It's probably still a few decades before Komi really caught in. But 1939, yeah, I guess it was at least a decade after that before people started playing Komi games regularly in the tournaments. That might not be so accurate. It might have been a bit earlier, but at this point they were not playing Komi games very much. And this Jubango, since it was a set of games where they would change the handicap, it was no Komi. Yes, so that's an important fact that I was forgetting to tell you. So it's 0 Komi. And Thumper says yes. A response to Rick Rubenstein, I missed that one. But Kadago takes Komi into account, and Lila 0 was built around a Komi of 7.5. But actually you can adjust, and I'm not sure if it's true in all interfaces, but you can adjust Kadago to 0 Komi. So it can give you both the winning expectation number and the point value of the position. It can give you both of those with a 0 Komi thing. If you just have to change the settings. At this point, of course, black is still winning with no Komi. But if it was a 6.5 point Komi, white would be ahead at this point. What's interesting about this is that Go Seigen, after the game, he felt that these 3 stones, he had some trouble and spent a lot of time agonizing about how to deal with those 3 weak stones that White left behind. For the time being, White's ready to sacrifice them. But he asked Kitani, what if I had extended once more? So that's going back to this point. And Go Seigen actually remembered this exchange, and he talked about it later. So that's why I know about it. But he asked Kitani, what about my extending here? And Kitani was really happy, and he would say, this was after the game, of course. So they were maybe joking around a bit. They were very good friends. And Kitani says, oh, I'll push here. That's a free 4 points on the side. So Kitani was saying that he just got a free 4 points there by extending his territory on the right side by 1 line. So he says Black should be really happy about this. But of course, from Go Seigen's point of view, this exchange would make a huge difference in the center, and it would allow White to play a Hane here and get a more comfortable shape towards the center of the board. So from Go Seigen's point of view, he sort of wished that he had extended here, and Kitani was saying that that's a free 4 points on the right side. So it's sort of interesting. I'm not exactly sure. These two, they would joke around with each other a little bit, so I'm not exactly sure. Just to give context, I would say that the normal move for Black at this point would be to play something on the side, and let's see, White might play something towards the corner, and sort of to attack White in the center here would be one idea, or Black could play something towards the lower side, and that would be another idea. But moving more quickly to the sides, of course, is what I would call the normal way to play here. But this is just vintage Kitani, and this way of playing, it might look very slow and it might look very slow, but it worked for him. And it's not going to work for me, but it worked for him. So they continue playing the large points, and this is where the opening ends. In classical games, in ancient games, and in games in the early 20th century, you generally had quite often you would have a game where they played all the big points on the sides, and then they would start fighting. And so this is one of the games that sort of went by that pattern. And now White moves out here. This is where Katago was saying, suggesting this move a number of times. I've gone through this game a number of times with Katago. It seems to be consistently, while the version probably changed a little bit while I was doing it, it's consistently suggesting this move. And it's interesting, Go Seigen plays this. He played it later in the game. But he was looking at this point, and the way that he handled it was very similar to what Katago was suggesting at this point in the game. It was just differently timed. It's very unusual to see a player, well, nowadays with the younger players, you can see players who have a feeling for what the AI wants. But for a player before AIs existed, it's very unusual. In fact, Go Seigen is the only player, I think, who seemed to have similar ideas about how to move around the board. And this shoulder hit is one of the moves that is very similar, and the way he used it is a very sort of AI-like approach. He was ahead of his times. And so White cuts here, and this was an astounding move. Like it's Black playing here is such a vital shape move that I just wouldn't consider it. But it turns out that White can push through and cut here maybe. White could even curl around to the left. Either way, it's going to be okay for White. Let's see, where's mine? Yeah. Sorry. Sometimes I lose the pointer. White could even curl around here. It's probably a bit more effective to cut. And if Black plays here, White can capture this 1 stone. And basically, Black is capturing those 4 stones on a small scale after Black has played a lot of moves on the other side of them. So there's some wasted moves there for Black, and it's going to be okay for White on the whole. Okay, let's get back to the game variation. So Black had to answer that. And now white extends. So what this move is doing, it's getting rid of the strongest black move. So going back here, normally you would expect white to play here, and black's going to push here. And you know, extending is sort of slow, but this would be a bit painful. Having black might continue pushing actually. White would get pushed around here, playing dame points. So white really wants to be able to play hane here, and in this position, black will be able to cut, and this is going to be trouble for white. It's not looking very good. So what white's doing with this peep is white's creating a position where white can play that hane. So in this position, black actually extended. But if black pushes here, white's going to push once. That was a forcing move. And can play hane here. And now black can't cut, because if black cuts, this is threatening a ladder. I had fun doing the ladder last time. Let's try it again. It's going to be sort of weird. It's going to be sort of weird in that it's not a normal ladder at the end. It's not a normal ladder at the end because it twists around a little bit. Usually in a ladder it would just keep on going diagonally. In this case, at the edge here, white has to do something a bit unusual in sacrificing the one stone here, which is a squeeze, so black's not going to escape. So it's sort of weird towards the end, but it is a ladder. It's a ladder that works. And I'm pretty sure the players had this all read out. Well, ladders are easy to read, even the ones that get a bit weird at the end. So I'm sure the players had this all read out very quickly. Okay, after all those moves, okay, I'm back. So black extended and white jumped. So white has a nice position there. White has more room, potential eye space there. At any point, if black goes after the 3 stones, white's going to sacrifice them. So, for instance, if black played a vital point here, there's no way that white would be answering that. White would just be playing something towards the left and ignoring that completely. The fact that white doesn't have to save those 3 stones means that white has at least one potential eye in that general area. So there's some eye space for white there. And that move I was showing you before, if white plays somewhere around there, it's going to sort of link up to white's moyo on the left. So white's left side is going to be the focus. Okay, Roman G is asking how long did the game last? The players had 13 hours each. They had overtime. And yes, 3 days. Brandon Moore has it right. And again, the players are not doing anything about the moyo on the left there so much. White's playing some forcing moves here. He just likes to give black over concentrated positions. And finally he plays here. This is the last big move on the sides. It would have been perfectly okay for white to start surrounding the moyo immediately with something in the center. But I think again, Go Seigen just knows. He knows that Kitani is not going to play something in the center yet. Kitani was he was so focused on taking territory. He just loved to take territory. And Kitani's forte was that he could dive deep into the moyo. So they were both heading into that game where Go Seigen wanted to make the moyo, but was playing some side moves just to reinforce first. And Kitani was waiting for Go Seigen to do that. So they were both happy with this kind of thing. I would be sort of lost if I was with black in this game. I wouldn't know what to do. I think it's probably good for white, and for me it would be a difficult game to continue for black. I wouldn't know what to do. I'd probably be doing shoulder hits or something like that on the left side. But Kitani found something really amazing here and a bit different. Famous ladder games. There's a lot of famous ladder games. On my YouTube channel, I think I have a video of my game against Miyazawa Goro, in which he chases a ladder that didn't work on purpose and kills a big group of mine. So yeah, there's that game. That game. Ladders happen all the time. And there was a famous game where, in one of the Japanese title matches, I guess it was a decade or so ago, where one player misread the ladder and resigned immediately after that. Black is over concentrated, but yeah, as I was saying before, Kitani sort of makes it work, and we're going to see that from here. So he starts with this, sort of looking at White's weakness on the right, and this move. So this move looks really dangerous for Black, but it's going to be dangerous for White too. And so Black is looking at, just to give you the short story, Black is looking at weak points like this in the Shimari. At some point, Black might just be playing away to do moves like that, and it's going to get really crazy. So I could go on for this for about an hour or so, talking about this position, but it's going to be difficult for me, and so I'm going to lose myself, and I'm not going to do that. So I did go into a bit more detail in a video with AGA, so people interested in that can look it up. Playing here, it's just creating a volatile position here, where Black is going to have some potential. Either Black is going to move into the upper right corner with, for instance, let's just say White plays here. Black would be thinking of playing moves like this, trying to get some momentum in that area and using the potential, the aji of various ways to play forcing moves against this. So that might be the kind of thing that Black does there. And I'm not exactly sure how it would turn out. But to avoid that, White plays a more forceful move by playing here, making the focus, in this case, the focus is more towards the lower left area, just because White has forced Black to add a stone to this group. The two stones makes it that much more valuable for White to capture it. So White would be adding a stone there to capture those two stones to get a good position fairly quickly. So just to give a very simplified suggestion, White could be adding a stone almost immediately and have a playable position, just because Black has lost more in that local fight in the lower left or the left side area. What is a general tip for invading? It's really difficult to give a general tip for invading. Usually when you invade, it's not in an extreme situation like in this game. So usually you have the option of living underneath. So you think you have room to live on the third and second lines inside your opponent's area, or otherwise you're going to jump out and escape towards the center of the board. So usually it's making miai, interchangeable ideas of moving out or living underneath. So that's the general pattern when you invade a side territory. And yes, and what Thumper is talking about here when he talks about sector lines, I think he's talking about moyo that includes the center, where you usually just draw a line, imaginarily line, between the outside boundaries stones of your opponent's moyo, and you play somewhere in between them that will not be surrounded. So that would be going back to several moves here. So you would probably, if you wanted to be safe, you would draw a line between these two stones. And well, yeah, you're not allowed to draw on go boards, so you'd imagine it. But yeah, so Black would play, if Black played something like this, for instance, Black would know that that stone would be able to escape because it's sort of on that line. But in this game, of course, the left side is so wide open that Kitani has to do more than that. Black has to do more than that. And so he's not obeying the general rules of thumb that I would be giving you. It's not really a good example for how you would succeed in this kind of fight without reading superlative reading. Like this is reading that is better than most professionals. Almost all professionals. Like there's very few professionals who can equal the quality of reading here. And so it's a very special game because of that. Okay, so Kitani plays here. He's looking at that hane at c7. So if Black hane, if Black hane is here, this would, I'm using the wrong tool here. So if Black hane is here, This would have been a different way to do it, and white would add a stone on the side, and black would get this in the center. And we're going to see white surrounding the whole left side. So this would be one way to play the trade, but he really wanted to hane at 1 at the c7 point. And so in the game, he changed the order. And now it would just be different if white played here. It would be better not to have that exchange of a black stone. The black stone here and the white stone here would be a bad exchange for black, so it's just better for black not to have that exchange. And so white extends. So black is sort of forcing a sequence. These were all forcing moves, where he gets to play here. So what black is trying to do here, obviously white has to save those 2 stones. There's 2 ways to do it. White could, in the game, white just captured 1 stone there. Otherwise, playing here looks feasible, but it's going to be really bad Aji towards the side. Let's see. Actually, I had black push once here first. Yeah, and then black does this. And it's going to be really difficult for white to kill these stones. The main variation would be white pushing from above. And now white has a choice of allowing black to live, which would be this variation. And then white would start fighting in the center of the board. White would try to escape something like this, maybe. I guess white would play here. And it would be a fight in the center of the board. White's in trouble, black's in trouble, they're both in trouble. Probably both escape eventually. So that would be one way it could go. Or if we go back here, yeah, that was a different variation. So white here. Otherwise, yes. Otherwise, if white just plays the double hane, then white's going to capture the cutting stones on a fairly large scale, like this. But black gets the corner. And it's sort of difficult for white to kill those black stones in the center, because, for instance, black has this move, which is getting white into trouble here. It's worse trouble than I thought. It's actually black can cut here. So yeah. So white doesn't really have that option. And so if white would be playing something on this side, and black would be escaping towards the center. There's still some stuff happening with black moves at the mark points there. So it's not 100% safe for white. And black would be alive in the upper left corner. So that's various things that could happen. And instead of doing it that way, here we are. White took the 1 stone. And this is where black starts to be really fancy and plays here. Escaping out with this move. And yes, so basically what black is doing here is that in this position, black needs to play 2 moves to succeed. There's 2 points that black wants to play. Black wants to connect here, but then white would play here and just sacrifice 3 stones here. And white would have a pretty good position. White would be continuing in the upper left here, finishing that moyo. So this is what white's trying to do. Basically, 1 and 2 are interchangeable points. So if black pushes here, it's not forcing in this case. White's just going to play here. And this would be bad for black too. The whole area in the upper left is going to be white's territory. It's going to end up being white's territory. So black wants to play both of those points and is trying to manufacture that with this. In which case, if white plays here, that was a forced sequence. Black covers, threatening to kill. Well, it's going to be a ko, but white plays here. And now black can push, and those 2 stones on the left, they're not going to be captured. Because when white plays the cut here, black does have the forcing move on the first line, threatening to make a ko. And, oh, thank you, Brandon Moore. Wow, thank you very much. That was very generous. Black is threatening to make a ko here. And if white answers, black connects up. And in this game, in this particular fight, black does have some ko threats, so it's worth it. And so white, this is not successful for white. So going back to the game, when black cut here, white did not push through, but simply played here. And in this case, black gets more on the left side. A very good position on the left side. But white did get Sente to play in the center. So this was an even trade. It was, I would say it was perfectly played by both sides. And white is threatening, actually threatening a tombstone Tetsuji, or the pillar, stone pillar Tetsuji is probably the correct way to say it. So what's happening there is that black actually cut here, which prevented it from happening. So this is sort of fun, because if black plays away, actually this is what should happen, but if black connects here, and white covers and then plays here, this is going to be a tombstone Tetsuji, or what I usually call the pillar, the stone pillar. And you can see it depends on white being able to play an Atari at 14. So this would be a disaster for black. In actual play, black would find a point to back off. So that could even be black 9 here would be one chance, but white, you can see white's getting a lot of territory on the left there in Sente. Or black would probably back off with black 3, but it would be a bit painful with black needing to put one more stone in here. So that would be Sente for white. So that's what white was looking at. And that Tetsuji, where white was squeezing, let's just take a quick look at that squeeze once more. Not this one, yes, this one. You can see white has to be able to play at 14. So that was what black did in the game with that cut. So black is stopping that variation with the cut here. And this figures into something exciting that happened later in the game. But I'm sort of getting ahead of myself. But yeah, let's just try to get there. And you can see this move again. I was showing it in some of the diagrams. It's a really important move that white needs to finish off the upper left territory, which is something close to 70 points now. It's huge. It's called tombstone sometimes because it's the same shape as a Japanese style, traditional style tombstone. They have a kind of a block where you put the remains or something to do with the deceased people, and then there's kind of a plaque. It's a stone pillar engraved with the name of the family usually. So it's actually a traditional shape that sort of looks like that shape where black is getting squeezed. Usually you don't have all these extra stones. So the traditional tombstone shape is just these two black stones. Let's mark them with the triangle. It's usually just these two stones. The smaller shape is the one we usually use as an example. And it's more like a kind of a little stone pillar there. A stone pagoda. I guess that works also. That was Brandon Moore, yes. Okay, so this is still the game variation. And here, so we saw this huge fight on the left side and how it worked for black. And it was pretty amazing because I probably would have crashed somewhere in the middle of that fight, but it worked perfectly well. Now black's going to start on the right side area for white. And he starts with the 3-3 point, pretty conventional. And now he's going to do this. So this is actually a Tetsuji that has been seen in professional games for hundreds of years. It's a kind of a key point in that large knights move that white played earlier. So it's a kind of a key point in this shape that white has in the corner here. So it comes up a lot. But the way Kitani uses it here, it's pretty special. So just to show you why he had to go to that extent. If black plays the normal way, which would be like this is what a kind of a mundane way to either live in, to connect up to the side by and live that way, or otherwise, if white covers, it's going to be a ko at least. So this ko would be sort of dangerous for white too, and black has ko threats in the upper left corner. So that's the idea with this move. In this game position, white would just play here and allow black to connect, going on like this. You can see white's going to get some territory in the center. I don't know, let's see, maybe something like this. And this would be good enough for white. White's winning in this position. Reckless looking attaching. You wouldn't believe the amount of calculation. That's Roman G, yes. They do look sort of reckless, and they were extremely well calculated. Yeah. So the normal way of playing is not going to be good enough for black, and black plays here. So basically the idea with this move is that if white plays here, and we get into a position like this, black's going to get more territory in the corner. But it wasn't that simple. For the time being, if black does this immediately, white's going to play here and extend, and it's going to be cramped. It's not enough room for black. So for the time being, white can answer 2. So black has to manufacture something to change that. And he does it with this move. So what black is doing here, d5, 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 Brandon Moore is having a hard time reading about d5. Aji. The normal semi is just not going to be good enough. Let's do that one. So let's say we just get rid of that stone pillar thing and have a shape like this. We just fill it very simply. And actually, even if white could have played this point, it's going to be a one-move win for black. So that was not going to be good enough. White had to use the stone pillar tesuji in order to catch up with black. Okay, so now black plays here. What is black trying to do? If white plays here, black's probably going to cut here. And so the idea is that, like, if white takes here, maybe black can play here. Or maybe black can do this kind of thing first. Let's see, how did I... Yeah, I made the variation like this. If black can get all these forcing moves, it's going to be really great for black. And this is probably going to be hard for white to kill. So that's the general idea. Instead, white played down here. And now black can play here. And so the difference with this, to the previous variation where I said it wasn't working for black, the difference is this exchange here, which is going to get in the way when white tries to kill it with a move like this. And black continues here. It's going to be much more of a headache for white. R9, yes. R9 is setting up that tesuji there by creating a way that black can chase that stone. So, for instance, let's go back. That's a good question, actually. That was Leonardo de Wagner. So yeah, this way, white would probably, let's see, white could even capture here. So what's happening with that R9 stone when white has played here is that if that happens, maybe black can play an Atari once, yeah, and then here. So it's that much difference. Black gets to connect on the side. That would be significantly valuable. Black might not play that 6-7 exchange though. Okay, so white played here. White played down here. So in this case, this move is not going to work anymore. Because it's a lot better for white to have this stone on the second line, stopping black from playing the Watari underneath, the connection underneath. So white has gotten rid of black's cut here, but now black can play here. So just to say it again, if white plays here, it's going to be headache for white when black plays here. And I think I should suffice to say that because the variations are still really complicated. And when I dug into it with Katago, the way black took advantage of it was pretty complicated and confusing. And it sort of had to do with, at some point, extending here also. So that that left part of the center there is another thing that sort of mixes into this fight on the right side in a pretty complicated way. So I'm going to leave that. But just suffices to say that Seigen was now ready to allow black to live in the corner because white is getting something back on the side. So white is trying to make this exchange bad for black. So the idea here is that now black can live in the corner by playing here. Oops. Sorry, that was the game move, yes. So black can play here, and white's going to allow that to live. So it's alive like this. But now white can play here, that's a forcing move, and play the slide here. And you can see that this exchange here has lost black something like, it's actually lost black something like 10 points. Good evening, Arthur. Yes. So that exchange has become a terrible exchange for black, and the overall position is a slight lead for white. So this is what white is trying to do here. White's going to give black the corner slightly larger than it was in the basic variation, where black did something straightforward. Black did get a little extra space here with this extension on the second line. So it's a very nice way to be able to surround the corner. But that marked exchange was pretty bad. So it's an even thing. So going back to this, after establishing this potential life in the corner, now black is going to play here. Black's going to try to play another forcing exchange here. So now if white answers that somehow, for instance with something like this, black is going to continue here. This is going to be very difficult for white to kill. So for instance, if white plays here, it's easy to live with this. Or if white plays this way in the corner, black connects, threatening to cut there and pushes through. You can see that there's the threat of playing on Atari here, which is going to make this really tough for white. This is not a good variation. Yes, dynamic shifts in territory. And they have to calculate it every time. So that's where all those 13 hours went. At this point, they're probably in the third day. Let's see, how many moves do I have? It's 107 moves. Maybe they're in the second or third day. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the borderline was at in that game. But white played here, which for the time being has killed the corner. Sort of spoiler alert, that corner is going to turn into black's territory in the end, but for the time being, that's a white territory. And in return, black gets to squeeze on the side. So in this variation, if we assume that white plays here in order, white didn't do that, yeah. If we assume that white plays here in order to capture the two stones, it means black is going to get a forcing move from the center here. Maybe not playing that yet, but basically it's going to be this thing, where black has played got some extra endgame profit on the right side, and a forcing move at 2. And we'll still be able to make use of this stone at the 3-3 point by playing here, threatening to live in the corner. And if white wants to capture the corner, white has to play inside like that. So black's sacrificing everything, but getting a lot of mileage out of it. So this would be a close game. The game's really close. Like I'm saying that white seems to have a lead, but it's very, very, very close, and it's going to stay close throughout the game. So it took a lot of research actually for me to figure out who's winning, and even using computer AI systems. Sometimes I made the endgame on my own. So here black is asking white a question, and this is a move that it's worth remembering when you've sacrificed that stone at the 3-3 point. If you ever do stuff like that, this is one way you can make use of it. And so you can see that Kitani has gained some points on the right side there, and still has that potential cut in the center at that's P9 here. So black is getting some stuff towards that side and has sacrificed the whole corner. Now black's gonna sort of recycle that by making use of the corner once more. So if we say black is not going to do that and play some endgame move like this, that's so much less territory that black is gaining. Obviously, if black plays from the right, if black plays here, that's not enough room to live. So this would be dead. And this would be dead too. It's just not enough room. So black goes in between here, asking if white's going to play on the right or the left. So if white plays on the right here, like, if it weren't top professionals, maybe this is what would happen, but this is just giving black that much more territory. Black would switch to some other part of the board. I don't know. Maybe black can get away with this move, which would be, if black can pull this stone out and erase the whole center here, this would be very successful. And it would be very significantly big. And you can see white's not very strong there either. So it looks like it's going to be an even fight. And black does have some aji involved with the cut here or the forcing move here, which sort of, there's some potential forcing moves there that black can make use of probably. So instead of doing that, white plays on the outside, says go ahead and live in the corner. And black did that. So this was a forced sequence where black lives in the corner. You might wonder what happens if black plays here. Sorry, that's a completely different variation. If black plays here to get a bigger corner, usually this kind of thing would work, but in this case, there is some bad aji if white gets the forcing move here, this would usually be sort of a move. White might actually play it in this order. This is a move that white's going to be playing fairly soon anyway. So if white gets a stone there, and then plays this move, it's actually sort of difficult for black to live in the corner. So this is just one variation there, where it's a potential eye versus no eye. So for instance, if white had played here, then it would be a seki. If black plays here to start with, then white can take away that eye, and it's a dead shape. And so they are both playing key points here, provided this is not a forcing move. So that's what I was doing with white 4 there. Provided this is not a forcing move, this is going to be bad for black. White would just start filling liberties. Or even if black plays the hana here, this is still bad for black. And black has no way to fill it would be an eye against no eye. So, not completely alive. Details, but yeah, it's sort of important. So, getting back to the game, white allowed black to live, and in return, white gets sente, and it's a pretty close game. Okay. Okay, Leonardo de Wagner is saying, I've seen pros play something like c17, yes. Against white's large knight's move, corner enclosure, I'm not surprised you've seen players play c17. At this stage of the game, just in itself, it's not going to be enough to live. So for instance, if black plays there, let's do it with this move. White can play underneath. Just the fact that white has finished surrounding that territory, it means that black's not going to have room to live. Unless you play it as a co-threat, which is going to happen. So, back to the game. This is where it got exciting, because this is, it's like a move I would put out in one of my Tesuji videos. It's a Tesuji, it's a kind of a standard endgame Tesuji, which everyone can play. And white is trying to gain 2 points. To give you my final decision on this, I'm going to say that white could have played here, which is not the Tesuji. It's a very mundane move. White could have played here, and if black, well, black will answer here, and then here. A very normal endgame, and I think white has a small lead. When I tried to figure out the whole endgame, this game is sort of difficult because you see that center area in the lower right part of the center. It's really hard to say who's going to get how many points. And so the sequence there is difficult for pros too. But I think white's winning by a couple of points. Even though it's just the one area there. It's just that center area because the rest of the board is pretty much finished. And there is a big move in the middle of the upper side here. There's a big move here. That's one big move. But apart from that, just about all of the endgame moves. And there's a big move for black. It would be covering here. There's a big move there. And then it's just that lower right center area. It's still difficult. But it looks like white's a bit ahead. In the game, when white plays here, normally you would expect black to play here. White would play here. Black would pull back. And then white would put a stone in. You can see white's pushed black back one line here. So it's the two black stones at 1 and 3, filling two points of black territory, which those are the 2 points that black is winning. And Brandon Moore, yes, the balance in score with consideration of no komi. So white is winning by, I think white is winning by 2 points, regardless of the fact that white is not getting any komi. So white played that move, and this move was, if this is given as a Tesuji problem, it would be the only move you would think of maybe. But of course it's sort of brilliant to see this happening in a game. And I don't think white's mistake was in completely overlooking this move. My guess would be that white's mistake was in having trouble evaluating the full position, the score. In the case that white played the safer variation would be this one. So comparing this variation to this variation gains white 2 points. White was going for the extra 2 points. Maybe he was aware of this move. But this is going to be a ko, so it's really hard to judge. White covered. White has to cover. If white plays this move, black is just going to fill liberty, and white's already dead. So this would be like this and like this, and black would just chase that and eventually come from behind, even if white can poke out a few times. So that's bad. So white has to play an Atari. And of course, obviously black cannot connect, but black can play the ko here. So we get into this ko, and it's really fun to watch because white's going to be crawling all the way into that black corner in the upper right corner. It's gonna happen in a correct sequence. It's really weird and funny. So first of all, white's gonna take the ko. Black has a ko threat here. Now this ko threat, in exchange for that white stone there, black's losing a point. Black would usually be playing from the outside, and forcing white to play there. So it's black's losing a point by playing from inside. But of course the ko is more important, and this is going to connect to that C17 move that was it Leonardo was saying? Yes, Leonardo de Wagner is saying, was talking about the C17 move. This is going to sort of connect to the C17 move. Without the ko on the right side there, it would still not be good enough to live in the corner, but it's going to create a lot of ko threats. So white connects here. So now the question is, how is black going to attack white here? It turns out, obviously, if black plays here, white's going to capture that black stone, and it's not going to be good. If black plays some safe-looking move around here, white's going to have enough liberties to go from behind and capture the black stones on the side. So this did not amount to anything. Ivan Serikov is asking, is this, there was a game they played when the Hiroshima bomb was dropped, exactly, but that was not Seigen and Kitani. That was actually, it was in the Hoinbo tournament between Hashimoto Utaro and Iwamoto Kaoru. So Iwamoto Kaoru, the Iwamoto who donated all his money to promote Gon in the West. And so there's an Iwamoto fund that is funding a lot of things, and good things happening for Gon in the West. That was all Iwamoto's money. It was the fund that he started anyway. So that was a different game. It was a really important tournament game that was being played at the time, and they were on the outskirts of Hiroshima because they'd been kicked out of the central city. I'm diverging, but it's sort of interesting. They were kicked out of the central city. They had a hotel in the center of the city. They were kicked out because by the chief of the police force, because he knew that there was going to be some kind of a bombing run in Hiroshima the next day. So he forced them to leave the center city, and they were on the outskirts of Hiroshima. But they were still close enough to get the blast. So the blast of wind hit them, and they were thrown to different parts of the room. The board was turned over. And the amazing thing about it was that immediately after the bomb dropped and everything calmed down a little bit, they just rearranged the stones on the board and started again. So they continued the game. They didn't realize, of course, how serious it was. It took everyone, it took a lot of time before they realized all about the radiation and stuff like that. Yeah, so I sort of diverge here. The point is, I'm making in the local board position is that black has to fill a liberty, and he can't do it from the first line, so he's going to do it from here. And white is going to extend. Black still has to fill liberties, and so it's like this sort of inching along battle. This move is the Tetsuji here, where if white just extends, black's going to fill liberties like this, and it's going to be, this would be a more immediate attack on white. So this would be working for black. So it's important for white to jump here. Still, black has to continue filling from above. So it looks really, it's sort of amusing, I find this, but it's a forced sequence here, where black is squeezing. And finally, white runs out of places to play, and white's going to have to start the ko. So it's still a ko. But white got a lot of territory there. That's about 20 points of black's territory that's disappeared if white can win the ko. And yes, of course, kappa kia. Professional Go players generally remember where they played, yes. Okay, so now black played that one cut there as a forcing move before black starts the ko. And now they're in earnest in ko. You can see that huge group of its 13, 14 white stones that's going to be captured if black wins the ko. But most of these stones are inside, they're inside what was originally black's territory. So most of these stones, when you sort of count how much black has gained in this ko, they don't really count in a way. But black is going to get something like 10 points, and it's going to save those black stones on the side. So it's still a pretty big ko. And black has these ko threats. So finally, was that Leonardo de Wagner wanted to play c17. Finally, black gets to play it. Obviously, locally, it's not going to work. But white's going to have to allow black to play the ko threat sequence there. And so white has, so yeah, as I was saying, most of these stones are inside what was originally black's territory. So if we just look at these stones are the ones that the trade that white is standing to lose points on. So the lower left corner, the lower right corner is big enough, and black answered that. And now black plays here, and like locally, white can kill it. White can kill it with a move here. If black slides, white can kill it like this. If black, sorry, I'm getting into a different variation. If black crawls, white can play here. Just the fact that white has so many stones surrounding the whole area. There's no way black can live there. But white ran out of ko threats. This is move 157. Move 157, in the newspaper, they wrote about this move because this is where Kitani had a nosebleed. His nose started, he had a bloody nose, probably because it was such an intense fight that they were having here. And the game is still really, really close. Even though black seems to have gained a few points, it's going to be really, really close. And I'm talking about the ko here. I think black is going to gain a few points in the fight here. And this whole sequence was like a decisive winning sequence that black played. So he's doing well, and actually Go Seigen is in trouble at this point. So he's very absorbed in the game. And Kitani had a bloody nose. He had a nosebleed. and he couldn't stay seated in front of the board. And so he had to lie down for a bit, but he was very short of time. He was short of time. I think he had 10 or 20 minutes left. He was short of time, and he was afraid that Go Seigen would play a move and he wouldn't be able to respond. And so he was getting sort of frantic, and he wanted to sit up and watch Go Seigen think. And so he tried sitting up again, and he couldn't do it. He had to lie down again. While all of this was going on. Oh yes, Max Peterson asking, wasn't Kitani suffering under some illness? And he had health problems for a good part of his life. So there was it could be health problems. In this case, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just the excitement of the game, maybe combined with that. I don't know, is the honest answer there. I don't think it was that serious yet at the time of this game. But Go Seigen seemed to be completely ignoring this as it was going on. And he talked about it at a later time. And he said that he was so absorbed in the game that he didn't even notice what was going on. So for a player to step away from the board and rest a bit while the opponent is thinking, in these games that were taking a few days, they were very lengthy games. So it was the kind of thing that conceivably could happen. So it could be that Go Seigen was just assuming that Kitani was taking a rest or something, and he didn't think about it. Interesting that the referee, and I forget exactly who he was, but the referee was suggesting, he was a bit worried, obviously, and so he was suggesting, that they take a break, that they adjourn the game for, say, want to do that after Go Seigen played a move, because that would give Kitani an advantage where he would, since he was in time trouble, maybe he would want to think about the move while he was resting. So the referee thought that would not be fair. So he was giving, he was asking Go Seigen if he would adjourn the game at that point. And Go Seigen gave a sort of weird answer like, oh, I'll just play quickly and we can continue, or something like that. And it's pretty obvious, I think, that he was just not understanding what was going on. But eventually they did take a break. I think eventually Go Seigen must have realized that what was going on, and the newspaper article about it says that eventually he asked Kitani if he wanted to take a break. And, shall we stop or shall we continue? And they took a break for 20 minutes and then continued the game. So it was a pretty intense game. And yes, John Campbell is asking, it was right at the start of World War II. There could have been, I think it made the game more sensational for people following the newspapers and stuff like that. So the reaction of people who were just reading about it was, in some cases, it was more charged than it would usually be. And of course, there was the fact that Go Seigen was originally from China, and he came to Japan to become a professional. Within the Go community, it wasn't such an issue for people. They were more focused on just Go itself, and of course, he had a lot of friends who were professional Go players. So there was probably a difference in kind of temperature between actual Go players and people who were just reading the newspapers. The whole situation there with the World War was probably a problem for Go Seigen. That's probably a slightly later in this, a different chapter in his life. And so White has run out of co-threats, and White is going to. Right, yeah, that's true. There was a kind of a war in China at that point. And White finished the ko. So Black plays here. At this point, oh yes. Yeah, so Black plays here. White cannot actually cut on the third line. Yeah, so I did a variation for that, yeah. So if White cuts on the third line, Black can play once here, and then play here, threatening to capture those two stones. If White escapes like this, then Black can capture these two stones. So that's just not working for White. So white has to play here. And that has protected these two stones. So now if black cuts at e17, white can capture immediately with e18. And now black cannot extend. If black extends, this would just kill that black group. That's just dead. So black plays here. The whole thing was a forced sequence. They probably both had the whole sequence worked out. At the time, black played 157. So at the time of this nosebleed incident, they probably already had the whole sequence here worked out. The problem is that this leads to a very, very, very close game. It's extremely close. So black is alive in the corner. White plays this move, which is a Tetsuji again. White is creating a forcing move here. So before black gets to wise, white's trying to get a forcing move there. And so this is how the game continued. White did get that forcing move, and black is alive in the corner. That's pretty big. Black gets 7 points there in the corner, and that was an area that was White's territory. So it's 20 so points, almost 30 points. White did gain something like 20 points on the right, and of course there's a difference in tempo. So now it's White's turn. So it's hard to give an exact calculation here, but we've sort of went from a position where if White had avoided the ko to start with, I researched the endgame to find that I think White is winning by a couple of points. I researched this endgame to find that it looks like black is winning by maybe 1 point. So it's that maybe it's a 3-point difference, but it's hard to sort of localize the trade here and say how much black has gained, just because the fact that in the other variation, it would have been black's move next. In this variation, white has the tempo. So there's the difference of the tempo, and the value of a move in this general area is super difficult to calculate. So I didn't do that kind of calculation. Actually, white playing here, it's a big move, which forestalls, for instance, black playing here, threatening to capture the 3 stones, and then black would actually be able to capture these 2 stones. Black might actually play this forcing move first, and it would be able to capture 2 stones. So that's pretty big. And then black covers here. That's another big move. And finally, white is going to try to surround some territory in the center of the board, and it's not very clear exactly how much white's going to get. In this, Rick Rubenstein is asking about the possible Jigo, which is actually a possibility in this. In this best of 10 series, one player could change the handicap. So they started with an even handicap. Looks like I haven't put the ranks in, but actually it's Seigen 7 Dan and Kitani 7 Dan. And at that time in history, being a 7 Dan was a big deal. And so they were playing it even. But they were sort of mimicking the old ranking system where two Dan's difference is 1 stone difference. So, for instance, if one player had been a 6 Dan and one player had been a 7 Dan, the 6 Dan would be taking black 2 out of 3 games. So that's how the handicap system worked in the Edo era, which started something like 400 years ago. So an ancient system with the first Go professionals in Japan. And so it was the first organized professional system in the world, actually. And so they had this system where the weaker player would at first take black 2 times out of 3 games and have white in the other game. And there was no komi, of course, in either case. And then with a 2 rank difference, it would be black all the time with no komi, of course. And so these players are playing it, since they're the same rank and it's a best of 10, it's a Jubango, they start even. But if one player wins 4 games, or a majority of 4 games, so it could be 5 wins and 1 loss, then the handicap is going to change, and so the losing player would take black 2 times out of 3 games after that. And a Jigo just counts as a no in this system, so it would just be 1 extra game, and it would it would not count as a win or a loss. It would be a null result. And you would just have one less game. So yes. So that's my answer to that. And black plays this amazing move. Yeah, so I keep I'm digressing a bit, but the game is so exciting here. When black plays here, this is a really weird move, but you might say if white is trying to avoid complications, maybe white would play here. But then black's going to get this stone. So it's a more forceful move than, for instance, a move like this might be, in which case we're not so sure that white would be playing this move. White might be playing a more pacific move, something like this maybe. So he's playing a more forceful move, and in the game it seems to be working. White plays here, and in this exchange, white's territory in the center, the line here is pretty much the same as it was before. It's going to be difficult for white to capture these two stones, because black's going to connect out here. And at some point, black is thinking of playing this move, which is either going to capture those two white stones, or if white answers it on this side, it's going to create a whole bunch of forcing moves, a kind of a squeeze here for black, which is going to be good for black also. So black is looking at that, this move here, which is going to be very forceful and very effective for black. Okay, N3 or P9, N3 or P9 in regards. Yes, that sort of connects up to what I was just saying, doesn't it? That was Brandon Moore in regards to the ability at H7. Yes, and that all connects up. There is some aji there. The fact that white played first in the center makes that really much more difficult. So the fact that white got the first move in the center here, back at this point, this kind of move would be something you have to think about. But with these black stones off the board here, and it just being the one cut stone here, the fact that anything black, when black starts at 1 there, that fight is going to be more important than these two stones here. These white stones, white will be happy to give them up if white can capture those two stones on the left. It's going to be a super difficult variation, but maybe it's a bit dangerous for black in this case. But there's a kind of a connection there that could sometimes work, but probably not after white's played the first move in the center here. And so black plays the knight's move. At this point, I had a variation which I studied where white just takes the one stone, and it's going to be an endgame there. The result I came up with was a jiggle. It was a jiggle. But I'm not sure. And the game move was this. White's trying to do something better, but this was actually a bit of an overplay. If black had only played... It's sort of interesting. I sort of wonder if like he sort of is reading his opponent's mind. Because if black had played here, this would actually have been bad for white. And I think black is going to have a slightly larger advantage. Still something like maybe 2 points. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but black had a solid win in this case, I think. But black played here. It looks like a very natural move. Looks like another way for black to be able to connect up there. And this is where the game sort of turned around once more. Something very strange is going to happen. And I'm going to ask everyone to... I hope you were there at that point of the live... Oh, sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Let's see. I think I fixed it. I hope you remember something that happened earlier in the live stream when I was talking about the race to capture on the left here. I was talking about the stone pillar Tetsuji, where white plays like this and like this. And in this case, white cannot play the Tari here, which if white can play it, it's going to be decisive, of course. But right now, white cannot play it. This is going to figure into what white does next. Because usually you would expect white to play here and black play here. and that black stone is still on the board, so it's still in the way of white doing anything. White actually played here. Usually this is a terrible overplay. So like if black plays here, it's going to be bad usually, but white's playing here. Black takes, and now white plays the squeeze. And you can see how it's linking up here. So we have yet one more ko. Black has to answer on the left now. Normally this would be terrible exchange for white with losing a huge amount in the center of the board, but of course this would kill black on the left. So black can't do that. And so we have this final little drama here where black has to answer on the left, and it turned into this ko. And so a final ko, this time white has more ko threats. White has more valid ko threats. So this is the losing mistake actually for black, where if black had played the other move like this, black would have had probably a couple of points win. And instead black played this move, which looks such a natural move, but in this particular case, it linked up to that thing that was happening on the left side. Which obviously, like I was coming, people can see this. It's something that the players had read out ages ago, a couple of days ago in this case, because the game took 3 days. But the connection there is sort of unusual and unintentional, you might say. So now there's this ko, and black doesn't really have enough ko threats. So they're going to fight the ko for a bit. And you can see maybe white was just saving this lower right corner for the ko threats, because white could have played it earlier, but it's good style not to be playing it yet. It's good style to have the ko threats in reserve. But it works so well. And yes, so black plays here. Obviously, if white connects here, this is going to give black a whole bunch of ko threats with these moves and some extra forcing moves too. So white doesn't want to do that. White has to back off here. But the ko is sufficiently big that white can afford to do that. And another point I want to make is white's playing these ko threats in the lower right corner. These are worth about a difference of about 20 points. So white has ko threats in the upper left corner that are significantly bigger. White's saving those ko threats for a more important ko, and we're going to see how that happens. So white is playing the smaller ko threats now because it's just this ko in the center. White's pretty soon is white going to invest one more move there, because capturing here is not good enough for white. When black has captured those two stones on the right, capturing here is not going to be good enough for white. So white invests one more move here, making the ko even more big than it was before. So white really can't afford to lose this ko, and that's why white was saving the big ko threats for later. So it's the order of ko threats here is a thing too. It's really important. Very exact. So this is what happens when the players have a lot of time. I think Seigen, he's a quick player. He probably still had some time to work it out. In modern games, when you have shorter time limits, sometimes you see the players messing up late in the game, in the end game. But in old times, one good thing about these games is that they tended to play very well towards the end. And this mistake that Kitani Minoru played close to the end of the game was pretty unusual, was notably unusual. And so finally, black ran out of ko threats. Moves like this are just not going to be big enough. So capturing here is, locally, it's a huge move. So black cannot allow that, and black ran out of ko threats. And white captured the ko. And now they're finished with the ko. And this is the final big move. The rest of the endgame is actually pretty straightforward. Clamping there, sort of vulgar looking move, but in this case, when there's almost no moves left to play, it was the most profitable locally. And finally, they have, there's a 2-point move. Black can play here to take 2 points away from white, or black can play here. I think black chose that one. And that's a difference of 2 points also. So it's just a couple of moves left here. Let's put up the result fairly soon. I think I'm ready to put up the result. Let's see, I can find if I can find it. Here we are. Yes, so white won by 2 points here. So that was the final result. Let's just finish the endgame moves. Yeah, so that was it. They didn't have any close to fight in the end, and it was a 2-point victory for white. So this was the first game of the Jubango. They did go on to play 10 games. And all 10 games were pretty fantastic. So at some point, I'll probably continue in a little series here with all of the games of the Jubango. I'll probably avoid doing them immediately in order. I'll probably mix in some various games, contemporary games, and stuff like that. But this Jubango is one of Go Seigen's Jubangos that I really do want to play to show to people, because all of the games are going to be very high quality, and I'm going to enjoy it too. So that was my my thing here. Yes, I think I can show you a Patreon link if I can figure out where my pointer is. No, that was my YouTube. Okay. I have a Patreon link somewhere here. And so anyone who wants to support my channel by signing up on Patreon, there's a supporting tier. There's also a tier for people who want to play teaching games too. So you can play teaching games with me on OGS. And there's a Zoom link where I give a commentary for the game. And that's the $50 per month tier, and you get a game each month. And so, yes, that's it for today. I'm finished with the game. This is one of my favorite games, and Go Seigen is one of my favorite players. And it occurred to me that I haven't done enough of his games. When it lasts 3 days, I think Go is pretty physical. That was Thumper again asking about the nosebleed. I think there is a lot of fatigue, and the fact that it's even true of the 2-day games that they play now in some of the Japanese titles. The fact that sometimes the players are so worked up about the game, they're so focused on the game, and there's kind of a high adrenaline thing going on there. The players sometimes have trouble sleeping, and obviously if that happens, it's going to have a bad effect on the second day of the game. So being able to get to sleep on the first night is still a big issue for the players in these 2-day games that they play sometimes. And so it's, I think, yes, stamina is a big issue that the players have to be dealing with all the time. And thank you all for coming to watch this. Those of you who watched it live, it's going to be posted on my YouTube channel, of course, also, so people can watch that. And so, yes, so thank you all, and I'm finishing now. Thank you and goodbye.